Okay, you've just read the Skypiea Saga, which covers chapters 218 to 302. So how does this saga rank compared to the other two?
I found it less interesting than the other two, I think. It was a slightly more abstract, I think, saga, and it felt a bit patchy in places. So the Skypiea part of it didn't feel that interesting to me. In fact, it didn't feel interesting until they got to all the bits about that they were kind of basing off the Inca and Mayans religions and, the El Dorado gold kind of thing. The bits before that felt very like video game levels. Felt like sort of the Sonic or Mario, sort of the Sky Cloud video game level. Especially when you got to think about the trials and stuff as well. There was some interesting stuff in there. Like the introduction of the shell dials. That was an interesting kind of like new, but it again felt like a game mechanic. But it was sort of interesting new kind of technology. Up till now it'd been very sort of almost magical with the fruit, and then suddenly this is like introducing the idea of technology. Again, it's that thing of whether it was that sort of using the whole kind of Mayan Inca kind of Mondanican sky gods thing, where it's that the technology comes from aliens from another planet, and these guys are the remnants of that sort of alien race or something, but mixed in with the idea of Western sort of Christian heaven, the characters all having wings and stuff. It was all kind of really kind of confused and mixed up. It made for an interesting kind of thing, but it didn't grab me as my previous two chapters. I think it had lots of interesting ideas in there. But it felt like so video game level and so bitty and compartmentalized that I struggled to try and remember some of the bits of it. So obviously before they get there, there's the whole mock town stuff. That was kind of, where's that going? That's interesting. And again, it's almost like it didn't stay there long to sort of develop any of the characters there. It almost felt like an aside, the mock town bit. But it felt like a very patchy, cobbled together kind of sequence, but also then felt like it had some really important bits, introduced in there in between all the rest of it.
So who was your favorite character introduced in Jaya?
I think was it Ganfor? Ganfor?
No, not Skypiea. Before then, the Jaya Island.
Oh, the Jaya Island. Probably Mont Blanc Noland and the two monkey salvage guys. I thought they were interesting. I think they were underused. The introductions were really nice, I think, before they got to the island, and then that whole thing with him living in half a house and the facade on it, and then the whole back history with Mont Blanc cricket. All of that I really enjoyed, and I kind of would have liked to have spent more time with them. And I don't know, the way this series goes, probably they will get a call back at some point. But as characters, I really enjoyed them. When you go to Mocktown, you kind of get introduced to this is a sort of dangerous, weird place, and you meet sort of these weird characters, and you think, okay. What you don't realize is that they're obviously all Blackbeard and his crew. But then there's the kind of bunch of poser pirates, which I thought was quite funny. So it's that they're the ones that are all show, and they're all kind of about how they look and have less substance than the Blackbeard's crew in terms of their power and in terms of what they can do compared to sort of the more humble, if you like, Strawhat pirates. But I think they're all interesting characters, but I think it felt like it didn't spend long enough there. They were just the protagonists for a fight and make a comment on father with substance. As I say, I want a bit more with the salvage crew and Mont Blanc Noland, because the kind of all the story setup of that was more interesting to me.
So what did you think of Whitebeard's introduction?
Whitebeard's introduction, I mean, you asking me that question makes me kind of go, it kind of was, it passed me by. I'd forgotten that he'd been introduced, to be honest. In fact, I can't even remember what the sequence was that introduced him. Because I guess because Blackbeard used to be one of the crew, or was this the bit where they just have a sequence with him on the ship and he's got an invite from the Navy or something? I don't know. I can't remember what happened.
Yeah, so one of Shanks's crew members goes on Whitebeard's ship.
Okay, so again, it's one of those things that he does where he puts in a sequence that is small and incidental. Not incidental, it obviously leads to later on in the story, and it's probably one of those things of, if I read through it again, I'd be going, oh, okay. But it's sort of almost like an aside. There are lots of asides like that. I'd almost forgotten that he sat in a bar with Blackbeard and argued about food and drink. It's like, it's that, he does that kind of low-key introduction of some of the major characters, but again, to that thread, it's fairly inconsequential. It's introduced, but it has no meaning to the rest of the thread. It's something for later on, isn't it? So yeah, it's always interesting when they do little interjections when you see Shanks or his crew, or because that there's some connection there, and at some point, I guess, Luffy's going to meet up with Shanks again, I'm assuming. So you're just kind of wondering when that's going to happen, and what it also helps fill in the backstory of Shanks as well, and who he is. So you obviously got that thing of understanding who Shanks is, who he used to be. So all of those things start connecting up, but they're small kind of sections that happen, and it's almost weirdly the one panel sequences of storytelling, because it happens, you see those a lot more. They stick with you more than those sequences that you get in between major stories. So yeah, the Whitebeard introduction kind of passed me by. I'd kind of forgotten that it happened because it had no consequences to that sequence.
What did you think of the ending of the Cricket Noland and Calgara story?
So you mean in terms of like the fact
the bell being rung?
I was going to say the fact that it was true, and Luffy basically rings the bell to, despite the fact that the entire thing's falling around him. Again, that I thought it was great. Although again, it's that thing of the realization that it's not in the sea, it's in the sky, but it didn't feel. It felt like there could be more to it. Again, it's that, I think we talked about this earlier, it's that same thing of it felt like the end and the excuse to have the big asterisks and Obelix kind of village party with all the food and the drink and the celebration, which, as you say, it's all kind of, it just kind of something that sort of happens every time you end a thing. There's always a big meal or a big sort of celebration at the end. But I thought it was just that thing of the fairy story and the fact that, this person had been maligned and yet actually everything he said was true, and it was all part of the myth, and, that ending of the story, which was just proving that the whole thing was true. I just thought it was really nice. It gave a good reason for an epic kind of, I guess, sequence, if you like, to get to the bell, to ring the bell for no other reason. And to let Nolan know that the treasure, if you like, was in the sky. As a context for the entire Skypiea thing, I really liked the fact that it was based on essentially a children's story that was in fact real.
I'm not sure if you remember that they read the story out to Zoro back at the Baratie in the live action.
Oh no, I don't. When did they read the story? I'm gonna have to go back and watch that first series again.
So after Zoro got defeated by Mihawk and he's unconscious, they read him the story.
Really? Okay. That's interesting. Because they're not even going to get to Skypiea in the next season, are they?
No, not even Alabasta in the next season.
No. So it's quite a way away. So it's a lot of precursor, unless they try and compress things up again. Never quite know where they're going to go with it. I'm going to have to go back and watch this first season, I think.
Was there a character introduced in Skypiea who stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, the Ganfor character is the one that I kind of liked the most, in terms of, again, it's that thing of, it feels like the mix and match of all the different sort of mythologies and folk tales and whatever else. He has that kind of Fisher King from King Arthur, where his kingdom is sort of almost been taken from him and is falling apart, and he's doing what he can to just do something positive within his kingdom. So yeah, because he's obviously tried to get peace, and he's obviously been usurped. He's obviously helping what he sees to be something that could help his kingdom. And then just that, instead of the fish king who's fishing, essentially growing pumpkin for pumpkin juice, which is fair enough. So yeah, I like that, and Pierre and the whole. So he's like your traditional kind of classical fallen knight, fallen king kind of character, which I kind of liked. And I like the fact that sort of at the end, he almost gets his kingdom back, and the peace happens across all the different sort of groups. And that's a nice resolution to that kind of tale and story. Also like his bird, stroke Pegasus, Pierre, was it? Yeah, so again, like to see more of him. But again, it's just, there's so many characters get introduced. So many of them, that are interesting. And it's almost Enel was almost the least interesting character. Yeah, he's just, he's almost the excuse for the big bad, wasn't he? And yeah, that kind of whole lead up to lightning just destroys people, but then he kind of felt like his lightning destroyed nobody by the end of it. It was a big excuse for a big fight, I guess. But yeah, I forgot how I got onto Enel.
No, that was my next question.
Oh, what was the next question?
What did you think of Enel?
Oh, okay. What I thought of Enel. I found him uninteresting as a big bad character. You know, he's ultra powerful, but actually by the end he didn't seem that powerful. He just felt like a reason to ramp up everybody else. The most interesting thing that he did was, in a sense, make everybody else and him and his crew, in a sense. You know, those guys just gave the most interesting part of the story, which was the development of the characters and the power of the characters. And you got people like Nami no longer, being ineffectual, and sort of learning how to use the weapon that Usopp's developed for her. All of them actually kind of start developing one. We get to see Lucy going up to another level as well. And maybe that's why by the end the lightning feels like it does nothing, because everybody else becomes more powerful, in their fights and their battles, and they find their powers. And Robin was interesting as well as part of that, bringing Robin into it. Maybe that's a different question now.
Well, it's the next question.
Oh.
So who was your favorite Straw Hat pirate in Skypiea?
Yeah, I think Robin was my favorite in terms of the development that she got. I mean, as I say, Nami was less of the damsel in distress now, and she was sort of more powerful. But the interesting thing about Robin was the whole development of her and the archaeology part of it, and her motivations for what she was doing, and I guess that helped with the whole, it wasn't El Dorado. What do they? They kept calling it El Dorado, didn't they? But yeah, that whole Shandora, was it?
Yes, Shandoran, yeah.
Yeah. So again, that confusion between El Dorado, the City of Gold, and the Shandora, and all. But they gave a reason for Robin, and the whole reading of the, what are they called? Poneglyphs?
Poneglyphs.
Yeah, all that was kind of interesting. And then the development, seeing her powers, how she was using her powers, and then the whole reading of the stones, the ultimate weapon, and the fact that also showed that Gold D. Roger had been there as well, and the link between the D. Roger and Ace and Luffy and Garp. All of that was just really interesting. Again, it's that thing of she always feels really slightly disconnected from everybody else and aloof, but still part of the crew, but in a slightly different way. I forgot what the question was.
Who was your favorite Straw Hat pirate?
Oh yeah, Robin was my favorite Straw Hat pirate because of that sort of development. The character is interesting. No, so yeah, I think that development made Robin more initially just kind of going, oh, okay, she's a bit strange, but then the motivation for what she was doing was interesting, and then the story arcs and the story details that were introduced through her were really interesting as well.
Yeah. So finally, what would you give this saga out of 10?
I don't know. What did I give the other sagas?
You gave Alabasta an 8.5, and we didn't rate East Blue.
Okay. I would say it's probably 7.5.
What? Really?
Yeah.
Sorry, just I thought it'd be like a 5.5 from you.
No, it is the thing of, it's still, maybe it's a 6. It's that thing of, there's still lots of interesting things that happen in there, as I say, the introduction of technology through the dials and the whole wave rider, and that thing of moving away from the oldie worldy piratey thing to introducing the idea of more technology. That was all interesting, but it's just the whole cloud paths thing, and it just all felt very video gamey and sectionalized, and sort of, okay, now you've got to go to this level, and now you've got this mini boss to fight, and now you've got to get to this level, and it just felt very as a story partitioned like that. But then it had things like the Cricket Noland sort of story tying the whole lot together, which was quite nice. But it just felt a lot of mixed sort of characters, storylines. It all kind of felt like they'd been mashed together. The whole I've forgotten the name of the original natives of the Sky Island,
Birkins.
And then there's the ones that get pushed up there from the actual Jaya.
Shandians.
And that whole thing just felt almost incidental. Yet it was meant to be a major part of it. And again, maybe it's for later on, I don't know, but this just felt bitty, felt very bitty. So, all right, we'll say a 6.
Okay.